Welcome to the world of science function. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. The steel gray void of space stretched endlessly, broken only by the jagged outline of an ancient warship, its battered hull catching the dim glow of a distant, dying star. This was the Baba Yaga, a relic of a bygone age, but one that still inspired both awe and trepidation. For centuries, the ship had been a roaming symbol of Earth's tenacity, a mobile embassy armed to the teeth and known for solving interstellar disputes with equal parts diplomacy and firepower. Yet today, it faced an unexpected challenge, one that no armament or tactical maneuver could resolve. Captain Elena Vostok leaned back in her command chair, her sharp green eyes scanning the holographic projection hovering above the center console. Her auburn hair was tied in a tight braid, a testament to her no-nonsense demeanor, though the faint smirk on her lips hinted at a hidden playfulness. Her posture exuded both confidence and readiness, a perfect embodiment of a leader who thrived on the edge of chaos. It depicted an alien vessel, a sleek, obsidian craft that bristled with organic-looking weaponry and pulsated with a faint bioluminescent glow. The ship belonged to the Kaidari Collective, a race notorious for their unyielding bureaucracy and love of rules. The Kaidari had demanded an immediate audience with Earth's representatives, citing a violation of intergalactic trade law. The Baba Yaga had been dispatched to serve as Earth's emissary in this diplomatic showdown. Elena's first officer, Lieutenant Commander Samir Patel, stood to her right, his posture stiff. "Captain, the Kaidari have been signaling us every 5 minutes for the past hour. They're demanding we respond." "Demanding," Elena echoed, her lips curling into a wry smile. "Typical Kaidari behavior. Let them stew a little longer. They'll think we're deliberating, which they'll respect." "And if they don't?" Samir asked. Elena's grin widened. "Then they'll learn why the ship's name is whispered in hushed tones across half the galaxy." The bridge crew chuckled nervously, though none of them doubted their captain's resolve. Elena had earned her reputation through a mix of cunning, charm, and sheer audacity. Still, the stakes this time were unusually high. The Kaidari were threatening to impose a sector-wide embargo on Earth's trade routes, a move that could cripple the planet's fledgling interstellar economy. As if on cue, the ship's AI, a sardonic entity known as Yaga, interjected. "Captain, might I suggest responding soon? The Kaidari's patience is thinner than their exoskeletons." Elena smirked. "Yaga, what's the likelihood they'll initiate hostilities if we delay another 10 minutes? "Approximately 17.3%, the AI replied. "However, if you're aiming to annoy them into a tactical error, I'd give it another 15. "Noted," Elena said, rising from her chair. She strode to the center of the bridge, her dark uniform pristine and her movements exuding authority. "Open a channel to the Kaidari vessel. Let's see what they want." A moment later, the holographic display shifted, and the image of a Kaidari diplomat materialized. The alien's translucent carapace shimmered with shifting hues, a visual representation of its emotional state. At the moment, it glowed a sharp, iridescent orange, a color that Elena had learned signified irritation. "Captain Vostok of the Baba Yaga," the Kaidari envoy began, its voice a strange blend of clicks and synthesized translation. "You are accused of violating Trade Code 9742 Delta by transporting contraband materials through Kaidari-controlled space. How do you plead?" Elena raised an eyebrow. "Contraband? That's a serious accusation. Can you specify what materials you believe we're transporting?" The envoy's carapace flickered to a murky green, signaling suspicion. "Your manifest lists an item classified as a Terran cultural artifact. This item, a Rubik's Cube, has been flagged as a potential subversive device." There was a beat of stunned silence on the bridge. Then Samir, unable to help himself, muttered, "They think a Rubik's Cube is dangerous?" Elena held up a hand to silence him, though her own amusement was evident. "Envoy, the Rubik's Cube is a puzzle toy. It's not a weapon or a subversive device." "Incorrect," the Kaidari shot back. "Our analysis indicates it is a tool for intelligence augmentation." Allowing such an item to proliferate among our populace could destabilize the intellectual equilibrium of the collective. Elena blinked. You're worried it will make your people too smart? The envoy's carapace glowed a deep crimson, a clear signal of affront. Among the Kaidari, crimson represented a disruption to their equilibrium, a profound insult to their meticulously balanced societal norms. It was more than mere anger, it was an expression of systemic distress, a visual outcry against perceived chaos. We are concerned it will disrupt our carefully maintained social structure. The Kaidari require harmony, and introducing unregulated cognitive stimuli is an unacceptable risk. I see, Elena said, her tone neutral. What do you propose? Immediate forfeiture of the contraband, the envoy replied. Additionally, a formal apology from Earth and a commitment to refrain from transporting similar items in the future. Elena's eyes narrowed. And if we refuse? Then we will be forced to escalate this matter, the Kaidari said, its tone ominous. Do not underestimate the consequences. The channel closed abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Samir turned to Elena. What's our play, Captain? Elena tapped her chin thoughtfully. We're not handing over the cube, that's for sure. It's a gift for the Zarn delegation, and Earth's diplomatic credibility hinges on delivering it. But we also can't afford a conflict with the Kaidari. So, what do we do? Samir pressed. A mischievous glint appeared in Elena's eyes. We play their game. Yaga, compile every obscure trade regulation in the Kaidari legal code. If they want a bureaucratic battle, we'll give them one. With pleasure, the AI replied. This is going to be excruciatingly tedious for them. Over the next several hours, the Baba Yaga engaged the Kaidari in a war of paperwork. The crew dove into the task with a mix of determination and bemusement, their stations alive with the sounds of rapid typing and animated discussions. Samir, despite his usual composure, couldn't help but groan as he cross-referenced yet another labyrinthine clause in the Kaidari's trade code. Across the room, Ensign Harper laughed dryly, shaking her head. Who knew diplomacy required this much legalese? Even Yaga, the ship's AI, chimed in with sardonic commentary, managing to keep spirits high despite the mounting tedium. For every demand the collective issued, Elena countered with a meticulously crafted argument citing their own trade laws. The bridge buzzed with activity as the crew scoured databases, cross-referencing clauses, and drafting responses. Meanwhile, Yaga provided a running commentary, its dry humor keeping morale high. The Kaidari envoy grew increasingly flustered, its carapace cycling through colors at an almost comical pace. By the end of the day, it had shifted from orange irritation to violet frustration. The envoy's glowing carapace flickered with uncertainty, cycling between hues of violet and orange as if caught in a storm of indecision. At last, with a resigned shift to a muted green, the envoy relented. Captain Vostok, this stalemate serves neither party. Perhaps, a compromise can be reached? Elena smiled, knowing she had the upper hand. I'm listening. We will allow your vessel to proceed, the envoy said grudgingly. However, you must provide us with detailed instructions for solving this Rubik's Cube, to ensure it does not fall into the wrong hands. Elena nodded. Agreed. I'll have the instructions transmitted immediately. As the channel closed, the bridge erupted into cheers. Samir turned to Elena, admiration in his eyes. How did you know they'd back down? Elena shrugged. The Kaidari value order above all else. They'd rather negotiate than let chaos reign. Besides, she added with a wink, no one out-bureaucrats the Baba Yaga. The Baba Yaga glided through the Kaidari-controlled sector, the Rubik's Cube safely stashed in its secure cargo hold. The cube, a deceptively simple-looking puzzle of multicolored squares, had earned a reputation as both a cultural artifact and an enigma of Terran ingenuity. Its significance lay in the hidden data encoded within, a quantum algorithm prototype capable of revolutionizing interstellar communication. On the surface, it seemed the crisis had been averted, but Captain Elena Vostok's instincts told her otherwise. The Kaidari's sudden acquiescence had been too easy, too neat. And if there was one thing Elena had learned in her years of navigating interstellar politics, it was that neat resolutions often concealed tangled webs of complications. Her suspicions were confirmed when Yaga's voice, laced with uncharacteristic urgency, broke the silence on the bridge. "Captain, I'm detecting an anomaly on the Kaidari ship's power signature. It's subtle, but it appears they're diverting energy to some kind of cloaking mechanism." Elena's green eyes narrowed. "Cloaking mechanism? Are they trying to shadow us?" "That would be the logical assumption," Yaga replied. "I suggest we act under the presumption that they're planning something unpleasant." "Samir, status on our defensive systems?" Elena asked, her voice calm but firm. "Shields are at full strength, and all weapons are primed," Samir reported. "But if they're cloaked, targeting them will be problematic." Elena tapped her fingers against the armrest of her chair. "Problematic doesn't mean impossible. Yaga, run an analysis on their cloaking tech. I want every possible weakness identified within the next 10 minutes. "Already on it," the AI replied. The tension on the bridge was palpable as the crew prepared for a confrontation that hadn't yet materialized. Elena's mind raced through possible scenarios. Were the Kaidari planning to board the Baba Yaga? Disable it? Or perhaps they intended to ambush them further along their route? Her thoughts flashed back to a similar situation on the Lyco's mission, where an unanticipated ambush had nearly cost her crew their lives. The Kaidari's meticulous planning reminded her of that enemy's tactics, making her gut tighten with unease. She couldn't dismiss the possibility that history might repeat itself, and this time, the stakes felt even higher. Each possibility was fraught with danger, but Elena knew they couldn't afford to be caught off guard. "Captain," Yaga said, breaking into her thoughts. "I've identified a potential vulnerability in their cloaking system. It's highly sophisticated, but it relies on a stable power output. If we can disrupt their energy flow, we should be able to force their ship out of cloak." Elena nodded. "Good work. Samir, prepare an EMP burst. Make sure it's calibrated to interfere with their power systems but not our own." "On it," Samir said, already moving to relay the order. As the crew scrambled to execute her plan, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Kaidari were meticulous planners, they wouldn't have acted without a backup strategy. She leaned forward in her chair, her gaze fixed on the holographic display that now showed their ship's trajectory overlaid with the faint distortion indicating the Kaidari's cloaked vessel. "EMP burst ready, Captain," Samir announced. "Fire on my mark," Elena said. She counted down silently, her pulse steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Mark." The Baba Yaga released a carefully calibrated electromagnetic pulse, its energy rippling through the void like a pebble dropped into a still pond, creating shimmering waves of distortion. The bridge crew held their breaths, the silence thick with tension, as the ripple passed over the holographic display. Then, like ink bleeding into water, the distortion began to falter, and the ghostly outline of the Kaidari vessel emerged, its jagged contours now fully visible against the starry backdrop. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the distortion on the holographic display began to waver, and the outline of the Kaidari vessel emerged from its cloaked state. "We've got them," Samir said, his voice tinged with triumph. But before anyone could celebrate, Yaga interrupted. "Captain, I'm detecting a secondary energy signature. It's originating from within their ship." "What kind of energy signature?" Elena asked, her eyes narrowing. "It's consistent with a high-yield plasma charge," Yaga replied. "If I had to guess, I'd say they're preparing a weapon designed to disable or destroy us." Elena's jaw tightened. "Samir, target their weapon systems and fire. Disable, don't destroy. We're not starting a war here." "Aye, Captain," Samir said. Moments later, the Baba Yaga unleashed a volley of precision laser fire, aimed directly at the Kaidari vessel's weapon systems. The holographic display lit up as the lasers struck their target, causing a series of small explosions that rippled along the enemy ship's hull. "Direct hit," Samir reported. "Their weapon systems are offline." "Good," Elena said. Now let's see if they're willing to talk. She opened a channel to the Kaidari ship. The image of the Kaidari envoy appeared, its carapace flickering between hues of red and yellow, a clear sign of agitation. "Captain Vostok," the envoy said, its tone clipped. "Your actions are unprovoked and unacceptable." "Unprovoked?" Elena echoed, her voice laced with incredulity. "You are shadowing us with a cloaked vessel and arming a plasma charge. That doesn't exactly scream peaceful intentions." The envoy's carapace flickered again, settling into a deep orange. "We were conducting a precautionary operation. Given the contraband you are carrying, we had reason to believe additional measures were necessary." "Precautionary operations don't usually involve weapons capable of obliterating a ship," Elena said. "Here's how this is going to work. You're going to stand down and explain the real reason you're so interested in a Terran puzzle toy. If you don't, we'll be forced to escalate." For a moment, the envoy said nothing, its carapace glowing faintly as if it were deliberating. Finally, it spoke. "The Rubik's Cube is not what it seems. It contains encoded data, a prototype for a quantum algorithm that could revolutionize interstellar communication, enabling instantaneous data transfer across vast distances. Such technology would render existing systems obsolete, upending trade, diplomacy, and even military strategies among the major galactic powers. The collective cannot allow such technology to be disseminated without control." Elena's eyes widened slightly, though she quickly masked her surprise. "And you thought the best way to handle this was to stalk us and arm a plasma charge?" "We had to ensure you would not deliver it to the Zarn delegation," the envoy said. "Their use of such technology would destabilize the balance of power in this sector." "Balance of power?" Elena repeated, her tone sharp. "The only thing destabilizing the sector right now is your paranoia. The cube is a gift, not a weapon. And if you'd bothered to ask instead of skulking around, you'd know that." The envoy's carapace shifted to a dull gray, a color Elena recognized as resignation. "Perhaps we acted in haste," it admitted. "But the risk was too great to ignore." Elena leaned back, her gaze steady. "Here's the deal, you're going to let us continue on our way without further interference. In return, we'll share the non-sensitive portions of the cube's data with the collective. That way, you get your assurances, and we complete our mission. Deal?" The envoy hesitated before nodding. "Deal." The channel closed, and the bridge erupted in a mix of cheers and relieved laughter. Elena allowed herself a brief moment to savor the victory, but her mind remained restless. She leaned back in her chair, her sharp gaze flicking to the holographic display. The Kaidari's retreat felt too convenient, and the weight of the cube's significance pressed heavily on her thoughts. She knew better than to trust in neat resolutions. Experience had taught her that such moments often hid the seeds of greater conflicts. For now, the cheers filled the air, but Elena couldn't help but brace for what might come next. Elena allowed herself a small smile but didn't relax completely. She knew the Kaidari well enough to suspect that this wasn't the end of their machinations. But for now, the Baba Yaga had prevailed. "Set course for the rendezvous point with the Zarn delegation," she ordered. "And keep an eye on the Kaidari ship. I don't want any surprises." As the ship surged forward, Elena felt a flicker of unease. The cube's true nature had added a new layer of complexity to their mission, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the Kaidari weren't the only ones interested in its secrets. The Kaidari vessel slipped into the black void of space, its shadow disappearing from the Baba Yaga's sensors. The stillness that followed was suffocating, an oppressive reminder of the vast emptiness surrounding them. On the bridge, even the hum of the ship's systems seemed muted, as though the universe itself held its breath. Elena Vostok's unease deepened, the silence carrying an almost tangible weight, hinting that the Kaidari's retreat was anything but ordinary. Yet Captain Elena Vostok's unease lingered. The Kaidari might have agreed to stand down, but their concession felt more like a strategic retreat than a genuine resolution. The Baba Yaga was en route to the rendezvous point with the Zarn delegation, carrying the enigmatic Rubik's Cube. The stakes, Elena realized, had never been higher. "Captain," Yaga's voice broke the tension, "I've detected a new energy signature." It's faint, but it's tailing us at a consistent distance. It's highly likely the Kaidari are using a long-range stealth drone to monitor our movements. Elena frowned. Can we disable it? Negative, Yaga replied. It's staying just outside the effective range of our weapons. They're watching, but they're careful not to provoke. Of course, they are, Elena muttered. She turned to Samir. Have engineering prepare countermeasures. I don't want to make the first move, but if that drone gets any closer, I want options. Samir nodded. Understood, Captain. As the crew worked, Elena retreated to her quarters, seeking a moment of clarity. The Rubik's Cube sat on her desk, its colorful tiles almost mocking in their simplicity. To the galaxy, it was a symbol of Earth's ingenuity, but to Elena, it represented the fragile balance she was now tasked with maintaining. Each twist and turn of its mechanism mirrored the delicate maneuvering required to keep alliances intact and prevent chaos from erupting across the stars. She felt the weight of its significance press down on her, a stark reminder that failure was not an option. And yet, this small object was the centerpiece of a galactic power struggle. Elena picked it up, turning it over in her hands. What are you hiding? She murmured. The cube was a puzzle, and like all puzzles, it demanded a solution. But this wasn't a game. Lives hung in the balance, and every decision carried the weight of untold consequences. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sharp chime from the intercom. Captain, this is Samir. You're needed on the bridge. We've picked up a distress signal. Elena set the cube down and made her way to the bridge. The crew's tension was palpable as she stepped onto the command deck. What do we have? She asked. Samir gestured to the holographic display, which showed the source of the signal, a small Zarn transport vessel, its hull riddled with damage. It's the Zarn delegation. Their ship has been attacked. They're requesting immediate assistance. Of course, they have, Elena muttered under her breath. Yaga, can you identify the attackers? Negative, the AI replied. The vessel's damage patterns suggest weaponry consistent with multiple factions, but the signatures have been deliberately obfuscated. Convenient, Elena said. Samir, plot an intercept course. We're bringing them on board. Prepare the med bay and alert security. This could be a trap. The Baba Yaga surged toward the distressed vessel, its engines humming with power. As they drew closer, the extent of the damage became evident. The Zarn ship was barely holding together, its life support systems on the verge of collapse. Docking procedures initiated, Samir reported. Bringing them in now. Elena stood by the airlock, flanked by armed security officers. The doors hissed open, revealing a group of Zarn diplomats, their delicate frames trembling with exhaustion. Their leader, a tall figure with bioluminescent patterns flickering across its skin, stepped forward. Captain Vostok, the Zarn leader said, its voice melodic yet strained. You have our gratitude. We feared all was lost. Let's get you to the med bay, Elena said. We'll talk once you've been seen to. As the Zarn delegation was escorted away, Elena turned to Samir. Thoughts? It's too convenient, he said. The timing, the obfuscated attack signatures, someone wants us distracted. Agreed, Elena said. Yaga, monitor their ship. If anyone tries to approach or sabotage it, I want to know immediately. Understood, the AI replied. Hours later, the Zarn leader, now stabilized, met Elena in the conference room. The alien's patterns glowed softly, a reflection of its calmer state. Captain, it began, the attack was no random act of violence. Our ship was ambushed because of the item we were set to receive from you. The cube, Elena said. The Zarn leader nodded. Word of its true nature has spread far beyond what we anticipated. The Kaidari view it as a threat to their rigid social structures, while the Syndicate sees it as a tool to dominate interstellar commerce. Rogue elements within our own government believe it could give us unparalleled military advantage. Even within the Zarn collective, there are those who would wield its power recklessly. Multiple factions now seek to claim it, each with their own agenda, and we fear the consequences of it falling into the wrong hands. Elena leaned forward. What exactly are we dealing with? The Kaidari claim the cube contains a quantum algorithm, but that's only part of the story, isn't it? The Zarn's patterns dimmed, a sign of hesitation. The algorithm is a key. It has the potential to unlock a network of dormant gateways scattered across the galaxy, remnants of an ancient civilization. These gateways, once activated, could allow instantaneous travel and communication between star systems, reshaping alliances and economies overnight. However, their latent destructive capabilities could also turn them into catastrophic weapons, capable of annihilating entire fleets or planets in a single stroke. The stakes were not just high, they were astronomical. These gateways could revolutionize travel and communication, but they could also serve as weapons of unimaginable power. Elena sat back, her mind reeling. And now everyone wants a piece of it. Yes, the Zarn leader said. The Kaidari, the Syndicate, even rogue elements within our own government. The stakes are higher than we ever imagined. Elena stood, her resolve hardening. Then we'll need a new plan. The Baba Yaga won't just deliver the cube. We'll protect it, and we'll decide who gets access to it, on our terms. The Zarn leader's patterns brightened, a sign of approval. You are bold, Captain. But boldness alone will not be enough. Don't worry, Elena said with a faint smile. We've got more than boldness on our side. As the meeting ended, Elena returned to the bridge, where Samir was waiting. What's the plan, Captain? He asked. We're not going to the rendezvous point, Elena said. It's too predictable. Plot a new course, one that keeps us off the main trade routes. And double the security around the cube. We're going to need every advantage we can get. Samir nodded. Understood. As the Baba Yaga veered off its original course, Elena's mind churned with possibilities. The cube was no longer just a diplomatic gift, it was a weapon, a key, a prize that could tip the balance of power across the galaxy. And the Baba Yaga was the only thing standing between it and the forces that sought to claim it. For the first time in her career, Elena felt the full weight of her ship's name. The Baba Yaga wasn't just a warship. It was a guardian, a symbol of Earth's resolve, and now, the keeper of a secret that could change the galaxy forever. As Elena gazed out into the vast expanse of space, she felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just about protecting the cube, it was about preserving the fragile balance of power and ensuring the galaxy's future. Somewhere out there, her enemies were scheming, and Elena knew the hardest battles were yet to come. The Baba Yaga cut through the void, its stealth systems activated as it veered off the known trade routes. The crew moved with an urgency born of necessity, their confidence tempered by the weight of the cube's significance. Captain Elena Vostok stood at the center of the bridge, her presence a steadying force as the ship sailed into uncharted territory. In her mind, calculations of risk and strategy churned alongside the haunting awareness of what was at stake. She knew every choice now could ripple across the galaxy, tipping scales in ways she could neither predict nor fully control. Yet, it was this very uncertainty that steeled her resolve, anchoring her in the chaos that loomed ahead. Every decision she made now carried ripples far beyond her immediate command. Captain, Samir called from the navigation console. We've picked up faint signals ahead. Could be debris or an ambush. Should we alter course? Elena's gaze hardened. No. Maintain course but keep shields up and weapons primed. If someone's waiting for us, I want them to know we're not an easy target. Understood, Samir replied, his fingers dancing across the console. The bridge fell into a tense silence, broken only by the rhythmic hum of the ship's systems. Yaga, the ship's AI, suddenly spoke, its voice tinged with a rare note of concern. Captain, I'm detecting multiple vessels converging on our position. Based on their configurations, they belong to different factions, a Kaidari frigate, a Syndicate assault craft, and an unidentified ship emitting a powerful jamming field. The coordination suggests a premeditated ambush, likely to ensure no single faction has to take full responsibility for engaging us. Elena's jaw tightened. Battle stations. I want a full analysis of their capabilities, Yaga. Samir, plot potential escape routes, but don't execute yet. Let's see how this plays out. As the crew scrambled to their stations, the holographic display above the command deck lit up with the positions of the approaching ships. There were 3 in total, a Kaidari frigate, a Syndicate assault craft, and an unidentified vessel emitting a jamming field that obscured its origin. They're not here to negotiate, Samir said grimly. No, they're not, Elena agreed. Yaga, open a channel to all vessels. Channel open, Yaga confirmed. Elena stepped forward, her voice cold and commanding. This is Captain Elena Vostok of the Baba Yaga. You are in violation of interstellar navigation protocols. State your intentions or prepare to face the consequences. The response came almost immediately, a cacophony of voices overlapping before resolving into a single transmission. Captain Vostok, surrender the cube and you will be allowed to leave unscathed. You are outnumbered and outgunned, and no reinforcements are coming. Resist, and we will obliterate you without hesitation, leaving only fragments of your precious ship to drift through the void. Elena's lips curled into a faint smile. Bold of you to assume we're unarmed. Yaga, jam their communications. Let's show them what the Baba Yaga is capable of. The AI complied, and the air on the bridge grew taut with anticipation. The first salvo came from the Kaidari frigate, its energy weapons streaking through the void. The Baba Yaga's shields absorbed the impact, glowing momentarily before stabilizing. Return fire, Elena ordered. The ship's laser turrets came to life, precise beams of energy tearing into the Kaidari vessel's hull. Meanwhile, the Syndicate assault craft maneuvered to flank them, its weapons charging for a devastating broadside. Samir, evasive maneuvers, Elena commanded. Yaga, focus targeting on the Syndicate ship's engines. We need to disable it before it gains an advantage. The Baba Yaga pitched sharply, its engines roaring as it executed a tight turn. Its turrets fired in rapid succession, striking the Syndicate vessel's engines and sending it spiraling off course. Sparks erupted from its hull as it struggled to regain control. One down, Samir said, though his tone remained wary. Not yet, Elena said. Focus on the unidentified ship. It's the real threat here. The jamming field intensified as the unidentified vessel closed in, its silhouette sleek and ominous. Yaga spoke again, its voice tinged with urgency. Captain, I've identified the ship's origin. It's a rogue faction using experimental technology. They've equipped their vessel with a prototype weapon capable of bypassing our shields. Of course, they have, Elena muttered. Options, Yaga. We could attempt to overload their weapon systems with an EMP pulse, but it's a high-risk maneuver, the AI replied. Do it, Elena said, her voice sharp and unwavering. Her hand gripped the edge of her console, knuckles white with tension. Samir, prepare to execute an escape route the moment their systems falter. The EMP pulse erupted from the Baba Yaga, a wave of energy that rippled through the void. The rogue ship's systems flickered, its jamming field momentarily collapsing. Seizing the opportunity, the Baba Yaga surged forward, its weapons tearing into the vulnerable vessel. Explosions rippled along its hull as it broke apart, leaving only debris in its wake. Threat neutralized, Yaga reported. Elena exhaled, her shoulders relaxing slightly. And the other 2? The Kaidari vessel has retreated, and the Syndicate ship is too damaged to pursue, Samir said. Good, Elena said. Set a course for the fallback rendezvous point. Let's finish this mission. As the Baba Yaga resumed its journey, the bridge was quiet, the adrenaline of battle slowly giving way to a heavy exhaustion. Elena's gaze drifted to the holographic display, where the cube's secure compartment glowed faintly. The battle had been won, but the war for the cube was far from over. Hours later, the ship reached the fallback point, a remote asteroid field that provided natural cover. The Zarn delegation awaited them, their ship repaired and hidden among the rocks. Elena personally oversaw the transfer of the cube, ensuring it was handed over with the utmost security. The Zarn leader's bioluminescent patterns glowed in gratitude. Captain Vostok, your courage and resourcefulness have ensured the cube's safety. We will honor your efforts and share its benefits responsibly, the Zarn leader said. See that you do, Elena replied. This artifact has already cost too much. As the Zarn ship departed, Elena returned to the bridge, a wave of exhaustion threatening to overtake her. She paused for a moment, gazing at the holographic display of the stars ahead. The weight of what had just transpired pressed heavily on her, but so did the realization of what they had accomplished. The cube was safe, at least for now, and her crew had proven their resilience yet again. Despite the exhaustion, a flicker of pride and renewed determination surged within her. The galaxy would keep spinning, its conflicts and uncertainties looming, but for the first time in a long while, Elena felt ready to face whatever came next. Yet, as she looked out at the stars, a sense of quiet resolve settled over her. The cube was no longer her responsibility, but its legacy, and the battles it had sparked, would shape the galaxy for years to come. Course back to Earth, Samir, Elena said, her voice steady. Let's go home. The Baba Yaga turned toward the distant light of its homeworld, cutting through the vast expanse of space with the determination of a ship and crew that had faced the edge of chaos and emerged victorious. Whatever came next, they would be ready. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories.